Walk into almost any Honda dealership right now, and you'll see something unusual, certain models sitting on the floor for months, discounted, bundled with extra incentives, while others move within days of arriving. Honda doesn't publish exact sales figures model by model, but dealers talk. Inventory data leaks out, and the pattern is consistent enough to be worth understanding, especially if you're shopping and wondering whether a slow-selling bike is a red flag or a genuine opportunity. None of this is about bashing any of these motorcycles. Every one of them is a genuinely well-built machine. This is about understanding the actual market forces behind the discounts you're seeing and using that understanding to shop smarter rather than assuming every deal is either too good to be true or a sign something's wrong with the bike. Here are 7 Honda motorcycles dealers have had a harder time moving lately, and what that actually means if you're the one considering buying one. Motorcycle number 1, the Rebel 1100. Motorcycle number 1 is the Rebel 1100, a bike that's actually well regarded by reviewers and owners, but one that multiple industry reports have pointed to as an example of slower moving inventory in the broader cruiser segment. Part of this comes down to timing and positioning rather than the bike itself. The Rebel 1100 sits at a noticeably higher price point than the smaller Rebel 300 and 500 that built the platform's reputation, and it's competing in a cruiser market that's been softer overall as buyer interest has shifted toward adventure and naked bikes in recent years. A broader trend affecting cruiser sales across multiple manufacturers, not just Honda specifically. It's also a bike that doesn't fit neatly into either the traditional cruiser crowd, who sometimes want more classic styling, or the technology-forward crowd, who might not associate a cruiser with a bike they'd want a DCT automatic transmission on, even though the DCT execution here is genuinely well done. This kind of positioning gap, sitting between two buyer expectations rather than squarely fitting one, is a common reason a genuinely good motorcycle can still struggle to find its exact audience quickly, since traditional marketing tends to work best when a bike clearly fits one established category rather than blending two, and it often takes a full model cycle or two before a genre-blending bike like this one finds its actual buyer base, and sales settle into a steadier, more predictable rhythm, a pattern that's played out before with other Honda models that eventually found their footing once buyers had more time to understand exactly what the bike was trying to be. What buyers should know is that none of this reflects a mechanical or reliability concern. It's a parallel twin engine shared with the Africa Twin platform, a well-proven design, and a slower-selling Rebel 1100 on a dealer's floor often means more room to negotiate. Since a bike that's been sitting represents carrying cost the dealer would rather not keep absorbing. It's also worth understanding that a bike being a slower seller in aggregate doesn't mean every trim level is equally affected. The standard Rebel 1100 tends to move differently than the higher trim Rebel 1100T or DCT SE version, so if you're shopping this model specifically, it's worth asking a dealer directly which trim has actually been sitting longest, since that's the one most likely to come with real negotiating room, and dealers are often surprisingly candid about this if you simply ask rather than assume. Motorcycle number 2, the Gold Wing. Motorcycle number 2 is the Gold Wing, a bike that remains one of the most capable touring motorcycles available, but carries a price tag, starting well into the $20,000 range and climbing considerably higher for top trims. That puts it in a genuinely small buyer pool. Touring motorcycles broadly have an aging, niche customer base, and the Gold Wing competes directly with options like BMW's K1600 lineup for a shrinking segment of riders willing to spend luxury car money on a motorcycle, a segment that's been contracting industry-wide as younger riders gravitate towards smaller, more affordable, and more versatile machines. Instead, a demographic shift that's been documented across the powersports industry generally and isn't something any single manufacturer can easily reverse through product improvements alone. The bike's own strength, an enormous feature set including advanced electronics, a sophisticated suspension system, and in some trims a striking amount of technology, also means a correspondingly higher cost that narrows the market further, since every added feature that makes the Gold Wing more capable also adds to a price tag that's already well beyond what most riders are willing to spend on a motorcycle, regardless of how justified that price is by what the bike actually delivers. What buyers should know is that the Gold Wing's slower sales pace has nothing to do with the bike falling short of expectations. It's widely regarded as excellent at what it does. The challenge is simply that fewer riders are shopping in this specific category at all, which can mean genuinely strong incentives and negotiating room for someone who's already decided this is the touring bike they want. It's also worth remembering that Honda marked the Gold Wing's 50th anniversary recently with a dedicated commemorative edition, which tells you the platform still matters enormously to Honda, even if the broader touring segment isn't the volume business it once was, meaning support, parts availability, and long-term investment in the model aren't things a buyer needs to worry about. Unlike a niche model from a smaller manufacturer where slow sales might genuinely signal the platform's future is uncertain, a concern that simply doesn't apply here given Honda's clear, decades-long commitment to keeping the Gold Wing at the top of its touring lineup. Motorcycle number 3, the Africa Twin. Motorcycle number 3 is the Africa Twin in its various trims, which competes in one of the most crowded and fiercely contested segments in motorcycling, the large adventure bike category, alongside deeply established names like the BMW GS lineup, the KTM Adventure Series, and Triumph's Tiger models. The Africa Twin is a genuinely capable, well-engineered machine, but buyers in this segment often arrive with strong brand loyalty already formed, particularly toward BMW's GS lineage, which has decades of adventure touring mindshare built up. Mindshare that isn't easily overcome no matter how well a competing bike actually performs on paper or on the road, since brand loyalty in the adventure touring space is built up over years of rallies, group rides, and owner communities that a newer competitor simply hasn't had the same amount of time to cultivate, regardless of how many genuinely positive reviews a bike earns in its first few years on the market. Higher trim levels of the Africa Twin, especially those with the larger adventure sports bodywork and additional electronics, reach a price point that puts them in direct comparison with those established competitors, and Honda doesn't yet carry quite the same adventure touring brand cachet in that specific space, even though the bike itself holds up well in reviews and real-world use. A gap in perception rather than performance that's genuinely difficult for any manufacturer to close quickly, no matter how many years of solid engineering they put into a given model. What buyers should know is that choosing an Africa Twin over a more established competitor isn't a compromise on capability. It's arguably one of the more mechanically straightforward options in the category, and a model that's moving slower off a dealer's floor because of brand perception rather than actual shortcomings is often the better value proposition for a buyer who's done their own research rather than following the crowd. The Africa Twin's parallel twin engine and available DCT automatic transmission, borrowed from the same platform that underpins the Rebel 1100, also mean parts and service familiarity are shared across multiple models in Honda's own lineup, which is a practical advantage that doesn't show up in a spec sheet comparison against the competition, but matters considerably once you own the bike and need routine service done quickly at a dealer who's already deeply familiar with that specific engine platform. Motorcycle number 4, the NC750X. Motorcycle number 4 is the NC750X, a bike whose biggest selling point, that large front storage compartment where a conventional fuel tank would normally sit, is also part of why it's a harder sell for some buyers. It's a fundamentally practical, commuter-friendly machine with genuinely excellent fuel efficiency and a low, approachable seat height, but its styling and the unconventional tankless silhouette don't photograph the way a more traditional adventure bike does, and it doesn't carry the same enthusiast excitement as flashier models in Honda's own lineup, let alone bikes from other brands built specifically to turn heads, which matters more than it should in a purchase decision that's often driven as much by how a bike looks parked in a driveway as by what it can actually do. It occupies an odd middle ground, more practical than sporty, more commuter than adventure, which can make it a harder bike for a dealer to enthusiastically pitch to a walk-in customer who arrived with a specific type of bike already in mind, since salespeople naturally gravitate towards showing off whatever's easiest to get excited about. And a bike whose main selling point is quiet practicality doesn't lend itself to the same kind of enthusiastic sales pitch as something faster or more aggressively styled, even when that quiet practicality is exactly what a specific buyer actually needs day to day. What buyers should know is that the NC750X's slower showroom appeal is almost entirely about how it looks and how it's marketed, not about what it does. Riders who actually own one consistently praise its practicality, and a buyer looking for genuinely useful daily transportation rather than a bike built to impress onlookers may find this exact unglamorous quality to be the whole appeal. The kind of bike you stop noticing you're riding because it simply does everything asked of it without drama. It's also worth noting that the storage compartment isn't just a novelty, it's genuinely large enough for a full-face helmet on many trims, which is a real, everyday convenience that a bike built around a conventional fuel tank simply can't offer, regardless of how much more exciting that bike might look sitting in a showroom. And it's exactly the kind of feature that only becomes obvious once you're actually living with the bike day to day, rather than admiring it from across a dealership floor. Motorcycle number 5, the CB1000 Hornet SP. Motorcycle number 5 is the CB1000 Hornet, or CB1000 Hornet SP in its higher trim, a naked bike entering a US market segment that already has entrenched favorites, including Yamaha's MT-10 and Kawasaki's Z900 and ZH2 lineup, bikes that have had years to build dedicated followings among naked bike enthusiasts. The Hornet is a strong performer on paper and in reviews, but naked bike buyers in this displacement class tend to be a passionate, opinion-driven group who often already know exactly which brand they're loyal to before they ever visit a showroom, which means the Hornet is fighting an uphill battle for consideration before a potential buyer has even thrown a leg over it. Being newer to this specific fight in the US market means the Hornet has to win over riders who arrived already leaning toward a competitor, which is a harder sale regardless of how the bike itself performs. And it's a dynamic that affects nearly every new entrant into an established performance segment, since reputation in this kind of category is built over years of ownership experiences and enthusiast community feedback. Not a single strong model year, meaning even an excellent debut can take multiple seasons of consistent real-world performance before it earns the same trust as bikes that have already logged that track record. What buyers should know is that the CB1000 Hornet SP in particular comes well equipped for its price relative to some competitors, and a naked bike that's still building its reputation in a given market is sometimes the one place a genuinely competitive machine gets overlooked simply because it hasn't had the same years of word of mouth as its rivals. Test riding the Hornet back-to-back against whichever competitor you were already leaning toward, rather than ruling it out on reputation alone, is a reasonable way to make sure you're choosing based on how the bike actually feels, rather than which brand has simply been in this specific fight the longest, since spec sheets and brand reputation only tell part of the story compared to actually spending time in the saddle of each option. Motorcycle number 6, the Transalp. Motorcycle number 6 is the Transalp, sold as the XL750 in some markets, which enters the increasingly crowded mid-size adventure bike segment alongside strong, well-established competitors like Yamaha's Tenere 700 and KTM's 890 Adventure lineup. This is a genuinely competitive class where several manufacturers are fighting for the same buyer, someone who wants real off-road capability without the size and weight of a large adventure bike like the Africa Twin. And it's a class that's grown crowded enough in recent years that even a genuinely good newcomer has to work harder than it would have a few years earlier to stand out. The Transalp is well-reviewed and mechanically sound, but the Tenere 700 in particular has built a strong, loyal following among more serious off-road riders over several model years. And unseating that kind of established preference takes time regardless of how good a newer competitor actually is, especially in a riding community where owner recommendations and established forums carry significant weight in a buyer's final decision, since off-road focused riders in particular tend to research extensively before committing to a specific platform they'll likely keep and modify for years. What buyers should know is that being newer to a specific fight doesn't mean being behind on substance. The Transalp holds its own in comparisons against its established rivals, and a mid-size adventure bike that's still building market share in a given region is sometimes simply a case of buyer habit and brand familiarity, taking longer to shift than the actual quality gap between the bikes. Riders cross-shopping this segment are often well-served by focusing on how each bike actually handles the specific kind of riding they plan to do, commuting, light trail work, or genuine off-road touring, rather than defaulting to whichever competitor happens to have the most established owner community online, since a bike's online reputation and its actual fit for your specific riding style are two genuinely different things that don't always line up. Motorcycle number 7. Fully loaded top trims. Motorcycle number 7 is any current Honda model sold specifically in higher trim levels loaded with premium electronics, semi-active suspension, and top-tier accessory packages, since across nearly every category on this list, it's consistently the top trims rather than the base models that move slower off dealer floors. This reflects a broader, well-documented shift in the motorcycle market generally. Industry reporting throughout 2025 has pointed to softer demand across manufacturers for higher-priced motorcycles specifically, even as smaller and more affordably priced bikes have held up comparatively better, a pattern that shows up not just at Honda, but across nearly every major manufacturer currently dealing with excess dealer inventory. Riders are more price-sensitive right now than they were a few years ago, and a top-trim bike loaded with every available option, while genuinely impressive, is also the version of any given model that's hardest to justify for a buyer watching their budget, since the jump in price from a base model to a fully loaded one often outpaces how much additional day-to-day value the extra features actually provide for an average rider's typical use case, particularly for features like semi-active suspension that deliver their biggest benefit to riders pushing the bike harder than most owners actually do on a daily basis. What buyers should know is that this pattern often creates the single best opportunity on this entire list. Dealers sitting on a fully loaded top trim model are frequently the most motivated to negotiate, meaning the exact features that made the bike a harder sell for the dealer are the ones a patient buyer can potentially get at a genuinely strong discount. If you've already decided you want a particular model, asking a dealer specifically about their highest trim level in stock, rather than only looking at whatever's most visible on the floor, can turn up exactly this kind of situation. A bike loaded with features that's been sitting simply because fewer buyers were willing to pay full price for every option included, and dealers dealing with this kind of aging inventory are frequently far more flexible on price than their initial sticker suggests. The bottom line. So here's the bottom line. None of these 7 situations mean the bikes involved are poorly made, unreliable, or bad choices. In nearly every case, the underlying reason a Honda is moving slower off a dealer's floor comes down to pricing, market timing, brand perception in a specific segment, or simply an unglamorous but practical design, not any actual shortcoming in engineering or reliability. It's also worth keeping some broader context in mind. The entire motorcycle industry has been dealing with a genuine inventory glut over the past couple of years, with dealers across nearly every major brand sitting on more unsold units than usual as overall demand cooled from its post-pandemic highs, which means a slow-selling model right now isn't necessarily a permanent reflection of that specific bike's popularity, so much as a snapshot of a broader industry-wide moment, one that's affected Harley-Davidson, Indian, and other manufacturers just as much as it's affected Honda, if not more in some cases. If anything, a slower-selling model is frequently the best opportunity on the showroom floor for a buyer who's done their homework, since a bike that's been sitting represents real carrying cost for a dealer, which typically translates into more room to negotiate on price, financing, or included accessories. And dealers are frequently willing to have that conversation directly if you simply ask which units have been in inventory the longest. The riders who get the best deals aren't the ones chasing whatever's most popular, they're the ones willing to look past showroom traffic and brand hype toward the bike that actually fits what they need, especially when a dealer is motivated to finally move it off the floor. And that willingness to look past popularity is exactly what separates a confident, informed buyer from one who's simply following whatever's trending this season. If this helped you think differently about your next Honda purchase, consider subscribing for more honest, practical Honda content, and ride safe out there.